we have Atika Chohan with us this time. Atika is a very interesting background. She's been a journalist. She's worked as a print journalist for Hindu, after which she's worked in CNN-IBN. Is that correct?
Yes.
So CNN-IBN, after which she went to FTII, learned how to write scripts specifically. She's always been interested in fiction, but went specifically into script writing. So she's widely known for penning Bollywood's progressive, inclusive, and unflinching socio-political stories. She tends to write more about themes which are not just commercial writing but social political. So she's written Chapaak, which is a film based on the life of acid attack survivor Laxmi. She's written Guilty, Margarita with a Straw, Waiting. Waiting is again Kalki Koishlin and Nasiruddin Shah. And I've not seen all the movies, but I definitely did see all the trailers just to understand what they were like. And so she's done lots of interesting things. And she graduated as a screenwriter from FTII in 2008, and she's, I think, been in Bombay since then. Atika, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, I'm in Bombay since 2009.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So and she's writing, and there's another new movie that's coming up in a few months, right? What was that called?
I mean, there are a few that are coming up, but
Achha.
There's Agra that went to Cannes this year.
Okay.
And so that's doing the film festival round. And there is Sahela, which is also an Indo-Australian project, executive produced by Dev Patel. That's also in the film festivals. Both these films should be available to watch more freely and publicly through an OTT or other forms by early next year.
Oh, nice.
Then there is Ulaj, which has been already... Ulaj has already been shot. It's got Janvi in the lead. I've done dialogues for that. Okay. So the post is on. So that should also be sometime mid-2024, I think, a release.
Very interesting. So, I gave the formal introduction, the LinkedIn bio, but tell us a little bit about yourself, like what you really like to do and what kind of person you are, because wo formal wale mein maza nahi
aata. Actually, I think I really like to live my life deeply. I think, I mean, if however bogus that may sound, like I actually am more interested in living my life than to do other things. Writing is a form of living my life, but it's not necessarily like, sometimes I think I can do without writing. It may not be deep, but I just like to, on a daily basis, bring a lot of mindfulness and awareness to whatever I do. And I think that itself is, I find that very akin to my process of creativity, writing, my responses. So I'm just really interested generally in just, why we do what we do. And of course, this extends to many other things, like I'm deeply interested in socio-political subjects, but actually I don't look at it like from the outside. That is the box and the label, that is how it is defined from the outside for a common vocabulary, but that is not how I look at it. Like for me, everything, I'm just interested in, why people do what they do. And so largely I feel I could be like a philosophical detective. So largely, I mean, it's a tough one when I'm like I was someone's wife once, but it was a tough one. Like, I'm just generally that person who's very quietly, very sleuthy. So, so I'm just I just happen to be that person. Like, I'm just genuinely deeply interested in what's going on. So that's who I am. That is what also guides me into storytelling.
Right. So that's what I was wanted to come to next. So, the journey from where you started. So typically after college, we'll end up in a job. It's not necessarily the job that we would want to do but you'll end up in a job because you need to have a job. And then you actually start making choices once you know that, okay, Rozi Roti ho rahi hai. Then you start making choices and you start thinking, okay, what do I really want to do? So tell us a little bit about that journey from, I think the Hindu is where you started, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm from Delhi and I studied literature for 5 years. I went to Ramjas and Hindu did my BA and my MA. I mean, all I knew was that I mean, it's also like you just said, like it's your first career is something that is defined by your external needs like sustenance and like what your peers are doing and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
for me, it was a very like an auto progression into journalism was an auto progression. It didn't it was easy to land those jobs. Not easy exactly, but it was like the most traditional thing for the peer group that I was in.
Mm.
I got onto that bandwagon kind of like easily. I was writing for Hindu, then I went to CNN-IBN and like begged for a job and I got it. But I wasn't like this. All this happened like very quickly, like first few years of career, and I knew that I was not cut out for it. I knew I wanted to do something different around writing, and it was. I mean, I was at that time really scared to admit to myself that I wanted to write fiction because it obviously like it sounded like the most insane thing to do, like, writing novels or like, how will you live a livelihood? So the idea was that this was something I would always do on the side. Like writing fiction was something that I would do as a parallel thing to while I have other careers.
Right, like a real
So it
job.
was never like, yeah, like I'll
Yeah.
always have a day job
Yeah.
and that would be the adult me. And then this part of me would always be the private one. And then I'll have like a film or a novel one time or the other, if I get lucky, that is.
Right.
But as luck would have it, like I found myself in a situation where, there were some catastrophic things that kind of like coincided in my personal life. And then I took like really some crazy risks. I don't think I will take them now, but I took them at that age. And I was
Okay.
around 26, 27, and I had like no backup and nothing. So what I did was like bag and baggage up and left Delhi and like moved careers and like just landed, and I got through the film school FTII and I was there, studied, and I had no idea. Like the plan B was that okay, I'm gonna give my struggle in Bombay a year or so. And if things won't work out, then I'll return to Delhi to like a safe career in time, like before 30, so it's so that no one finds out that I did this. Like, so it was largely in my head, I thought I was like being very like taking reasonable risks.
Mm.
And then I think I had some beginner's luck. While I did have beginner's luck, but like I got some projects and there was one project that turned around within the year that I was in Bombay.
Okay.
What it did for me was that I suddenly had a credit, and that you need a credit like to latch on to
Right.
tell people you've done this, something has already been shot, and that helps you circulate yourself begging for jobs, like because no one wants to, you just, however much work you may have done, you are still a newcomer till you have a release. Like that is the kind of,
That's how the
a
industry
sorry
works.
state that we are in the industry. So yeah, so thankfully I managed to get past that a little more quickly than my peers. And then things turned around. So, but there was always like a lot of pressure. There was no money. The first jobs in Bombay 15 years ago when I began, it wasn't as lucrative as it is now.
Mm.
There weren't as many opportunities to develop work. There were only like 5 standard studios and like a few places in between, like a UTV Spot Boy, and so there were these smaller films where you would never get paid, but you could still get like a decent project, but you would not really get paid. There were too many gatekeepers and and very few cliques, and the larger studios operated in a very different way. So that was the space that I entered, and within
Mm.
that, then one had to like really sort of like pave the path very, very carefully and diligently. So yeah,
Wow.
that's how the
Wow.
first foray began. So it was in the beginning, like 15 years ago, like actively like 12 years ago, it was very, very tough. Like I did not get through to the first big assignment of my life till the first I got it maybe in the third year of being in Bombay. Like around
Okay.
then, like the first one happened quickly. Like there was a Yash Raj TV show called Rishta.com, which came immediately as soon as I landed in Bombay. And with it came a lot of other like there was some noise of other things that people wanted to do with me. Like Yash Raj said, they'd like me to develop a film for them under Adi and all that. But none of it ever worked out. Like
Hmm.
it never worked out. They would make you sit and on those opportunities, but they would never really actually take it anywhere. So
Right.
this is the other thing that happens in Bombay a lot. Like people promise you a lot, and then it actually these are the checks that never really get, they get bounced all the time. So that's
Right.
the other thing you deal with. So that kind of volatility is still a part of where we are in Bombay, and it will always be. This is show
Okay.
business. So
So talk to us a little bit about FTII. So, you went there, you did a course in screenwriting, and then, so how does that work? I mean, was it fun? I mean, how long was that course, and does that really open doors for you, or does that give you
the course
credibility
at
or
the time,
skills even?
so uh, good question. The thing is, I think I would have been an able screenwriter if I am one without it also. But I did think that the course did help. Like it did help because it kind of like put a lot of things in perspective really quickly. Like it was designed around that.
How
No one
long was
can
it?
teach you. So that time the course was a year long.
Okay.
But now it has become a 2-year course,
Okay.
which I feel is not bad at all. Like a 2-year long course is a very good time to give yourself that kind of foundation. Stay with
Right.
yourself. Pune is a great city to go to actually live in the campus and to watch films. Um, I mean, that year also in the campus, what it did for me more phenomenally, what it did for me was that it introduced me to so much world cinema, and I was able to like participate in the general film student culture from in the campus. So for me, I think that was amazing. But of course, the course itself, the program was more focused on getting yourself into the rigor of like creating certain industry formats around which are needed. For example, what is a step outline? What is a treatment? What is a beat sheet? What is a one-liner? So, stuff like that, which if you're coming from nowhere and you're just like landing into this
You won't know.
industry or like
Hmm.
this profession,
Yeah.
you need to have a basic know-how of the jargon or what people want. So stuff like that. And all of this comes with practice. Like no one can get it right the first time, but you need to like, so for this kind of introduction to basics, to the foundation, like it creates a foundational program for sure. So it did help me. It did
Okay.
help me. And the course, of course, like the program ended with us, like the requirement of the program was that, like how you guys are writing your first draft, this is
Yeah.
the first draft group. So we were also like writing our first scripts, like, so the course was designed around one full detailed treatment and one full screenplay with dialogues. So the year was divided between certain submissions. And so that the idea was that when we all get out of the course and return to either if we go to Bombay or return to wherever we came from, we should have a script on us and a few
Okay.
stories written out, so that becomes the sample work, like that becomes the the way that becomes your calling card when you go meet a producer. You don't go there just with like doe-eyed. You don't go there doe-eyed. You actually go there with something substantial. And this would, of course, they taught you how to write it in a certain format. The other side of a situation like this is all of this is always very rushed and hurried, and like you're meeting the deadlines for its own sake. Sometimes you're not really arrived at the depth of the script yet. You're still figuring what you haven't really gotten into subsequent drafts, so you're like the script is still too raw. So while you may know structurally what you're doing with it, like you have an idea of it, you
Hmm.
may not have even like hit the conflict like yourself privately. Like
Sure.
so because you're rushing it because you have to meet the deadline. But
Right.
either way, it is a good exercise to go through. Like I'm glad that there are programs like this which force you to do this, because writers have a tendency to delay this and be lazy. And
Yeah.
if left to our devices, left to our own devices, we would never feel ready to get
Yeah.
to that
Yeah.
final point. So I think this kind of course forces you to confront your greatest fears and get to some kind of an end, like
Right.
get to a z. Like the idea is to Like I call it's my terminology. I don't know if it works or not, but I call it zero draft. Like I my first draft, I call it my zero draft. Like I just go full throttle and write what comes to me instinctively in the first go. That's my zero draft. So a program like this always sets you up to define what your zero draft is, so that you have already internalized a lot of other things. For example, a new writer is also struggling with format. They're also struggling with like the way to get to a scene more efficiently, more economically. All this can be taken care of in the mistakes that you make, in that first draft, and you
So,
can just keep correcting it as you move to your next draft.
right. So I noticed that, and you said in your bio also, it says that you're basically working more on socially themed projects. So when you're talking about socially themed projects, so that's a very conscious choice on your part, or is it just something that happened to you and now people think that's what you do? I mean, how does that work? Because like Margarita, also the story of Laxmi, Chapaak. So how much? And the next question I have, which is not actually on our list, was about research for something like Chapaak. What kind of research do you have to do? But first, how do you land up in this particular genre or kind of subgenre?
You land up there because that's who you are.
Okay.
That's who you are. Like you cannot tell us. Like I mean, most writers cannot cheat that. I cannot cheat who I am when I am on paper. That's where I'm most naked. So this is who I am. I feel very passionately about certain subjects. Yes, they are socio-political in nature, but the idea is this is not documentation or journalistic work. These are human stories, and they are told in a certain narrative style, uh, which can be different when you collaborate with different makers. So that being the case, some of these films seem a little more political, and some could seem more human, more abstract, more arty. Like I have worked with the Kanu Behel and I worked with the Meghna Gulzar, and I know that each time it is my voice and their voice and a collaboration of that. So somewhere there's a midpoint in, like, Kanu has a very different canvas and a way of looking at the world visually from how Meghna looks at it. But if you look at like basics, like you look at basic fundamentals of humanity or politics, there is a lot of commonality that they both share. But it's all in the articulation that we have. Like so my job then is to understand who am I working with, what is that space we are working for, and all of that. So I don't know if everyone can bring that sort of skill to the table, and it's not necessary, honestly. I think everyone can be who they are. That's the beauty of this format. That there is no one kind of film. There can be many films. There can be a voice that is totally yours. There can be a voice which is deeply moody. There can be a voice that's more visual. There can be a voice that is very verbose and yet very effective. So there is no one way of doing anything. When the other thing is that when you asked, did this happen? I mean, yeah, there was something that you said which I wanted to address.
My other question was about research, because that's common to any form of writing. So when you're writing about a movie like Waiting, which is really about people being in a coma in a hospital, or about Lakshmi, kind of a story which is about acid attack victims, what kind of research do you have to do as a scriptwriter?
There are two kinds of research. Yeah, there are two kinds of research any writer needs to take on. You would know, you are a writer, even a journalist or anyone. Like there are two kinds of research. One is factual and one is experiential. And I think both are needed for you to have actually, like, because ultimately you're writing a film. So it depends on what is needed. Facts are needed for something where you document stuff, but even in journalism, you will see the best journalistic essays have a lot of humanity, in them. So the idea is to create something visually very strong, but you cannot really get there if you haven't put in the research. So the idea is to internalize the research. You just sit on mound of research, ingest it, and then forget about it and let then the story take over. And of course, the second part to it, for example, the difference between a Chapaak and a Waiting is, for example, Waiting does not require that sort of like intensive socio-legal research. I didn't have to read reams of, judgments, which I had to, for example, for Chapaak. That was very extensive. We had to interview a lot of people, including the subjects themselves. But in the case of waiting, for example, it was a more experiential thing. Like it was something that either you get it right or you don't. So you basically, you fall back on your own experiences. You are your own guinea pig. And I just happened to be that person. Like I happened to be a person who had who was grieving, who had lost her parents, who was, so for me, I brought in I culled in from something that I had experienced. And there's so many times that there's some things that you partially understand. And then when you investigate it further, uh, it kind of, reveals more, like the emotions reveal more. But for that also, you have to invest yourself into the subject. So what I realized is that, so you cannot have one without the other. You can't have like just your, you have to have like a combination of IQ and EQ to get it right.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's true for writing in general, but probably even more so because you have 1.5 hours in which you have to tell this entire story. So can't afford to make a mistake. So before I open it up to questions, and we have some questions which are already there in the chat. I did want to talk about one thing, which is the money aspect of it. So, now clearly you're at a very comfortable place and, you've achieved a lot in life. But what does it look like for somebody who's starting off as a scriptwriter? What is the starting salary, or is there such a thing called a starting salary, or is it really going from gig to gig and hoping that you'll get paid for something? Because you mentioned the first 2-3 years were really hard. So if somebody wanted to do it now, what can one expect, and what do you need?
It is time to be more hopeful, because after the OTT industry kind of opened up in India like 4 years ago, there are so many more opportunities that the jobs are mostly paid now. The gigs are not like unpaid. Most decent platforms and most decent producers you'll work for will want to pay you for the time spent and the opportunity that they give, that you get out of it. But it's just there's always that the money may not be too much, and the risk may be a lot. Like a writer actually risks a lot of time for to develop something, but you may not feel that you have been compensated properly for the opportunity that it has costed you, because you were so invested in one project. So it also, the problem is that the plethora of opportunities has also created a lot of ambiguity and a lot of a lot of volatility in the industry. Because of that, I see that a lot of writers are also being a little frivolous. Actually, they don't intend to, maybe, but they end up taking a lot of work, because they think that each project only gives them a certain kind of 5% or 10% signing of a certain amount that is tasked for, like a Bible work, and they don't really go far with anything. And I think what happens is that because everyone is just looking at making sure that they're being treated properly and fairly, which is absolutely their right.
Definitely.
They don't really, no one's really growing. Everyone's just like stays at the starting point. Is what my larger sense of it is. Is there a way to correct it? I don't know. I just see that this is where we are at. There's a lot of confusion right now. Like it's like we've still not become we've not formalized a lot of things, while the contract work definitely is way better. It's more vetted. 50 to 60% of the times you will be properly remunerated and compensated for the time that you spend. And yeah, so if you I think the writers somewhere need to invest more deeply. Like what I see is that a tendency to be very, very bullish and very frivolous, which is the other thing that has begun to happen with young writers, because they feel that ye nahi hua, to there is another opportunity waiting, which it is, So what in the process, what happens is the writers don't really grow.
They don't invest enough in one thing.
They're not investing because they're looking at it as a career. While that's fair. That is fair. But you know what I'm saying? Like you're not growing project after project.
Fair enough. So I'm going to take in the questions from various folks now. The first one is really about research. So we've already covered that. Living life deeply, we'll come back to that. We'll stick with writing questions and then we'll come back to the existential questions later. Somebody said zero draft takes away the fear, so they like the idea. Next question: when you write a screenplay, do you imagine who can best suit or play the role? Do you suggest who the cast can be? I sometimes imagine this with my short stories.
I do. Actually, I do. This is a hack that I have. This is something I do where it's sometimes I actually don't even imagine actors, but sometimes if I've felt inspired by someone who I've met, whose larger personality has inspired me to create a certain kind of like a quirk. So I keep imagining them, and then over a period of time, that personality or that character takes on like a, you know, it takes on a aura which is not just them anymore. Like then it becomes a person which is like a composite person with qualities from many people I know.
Mm-hmm.
But then it all starts with sometimes someone I know, someone who's an actor, someone, there's always a reference. Like I even have like a playlist where I I sometimes imagine a certain kind of mood for a film or an aura. So it can actually be anything. You just think of it as your mood board, feel free to do anything. Like it's your private world. You can do anything. There should be no restriction. Like I don't think if it's something embarrassing, don't talk about it. But just feel free, as long as you're not harming animals and children, everything is okay. So,
next question was research to final draft. What would be the average time frame? And what does the career growth path look like? Those are from Vidya.
sorry, I'll take the first question first.
Sure.
What was research to final draft? What
draft.
is? I take 6 months to do till I get took my first draft. The thing is, I also do my dialogue with my screenplay, so I don't. I mean, I can do independent dialogue work or additional screenplay work for a ready screenplay, but that's a separate industry job. When I write a screenplay, I always do my own dialogues, even if I know that eventually I will have to get another dialogue person to come and bring a certain kind of vernacular finesse to what I have done. But I break down my scenes through my dialogue. So that's why I know that I take 6 months from the time that I research. It depends on the research. Like sometimes if it involves extensive interviews, like something that I'm writing right now involved researching the project and like reading about it a lot and like ensuring that I'm getting the right political intonation of it. So I waited till I committed to a structure. Like I just kept meeting people. Like for 4 months, I just kept meeting people and reading books. And till I started feeling like till I knew the subject, like, inside out, I didn't attempt to like write a structure. Now I know I have opened it up into a 3-act thing. And I have begun to like detail the beats. Because I have an idea of how it's ending. And from there, I'm taking it backwards. So I know this process itself from the time that I'm doing this, because now to the time that I take it to a zero draft, I know that it would be like good 7th month of my life. It also depends on project to project. Some projects I can do, I think, I can do in 5 months. The turnaround is faster. Like if let's say it's something emotional, it doesn't require me to like meet so many people, etc., etc. So, and it's something that I'm very spontaneously, I could crack it really quickly. Sometimes I can do it in 4 months. Sometimes I can do in 5. But to be safe, I never commit to anything under 6 months.
Okay. So next question. So there was a question about growth career path look like. What does it look like?
I couldn't follow.
I said there was a question about growth, the career path. What does that look like?
For a young writer, like someone who's starting?
Yeah.
It's a promising one at the moment. Like there are so many opportunities. There are so many people looking to develop stuff. There's so many independent producers. There's also a way to get funding from abroad, like, or like to have multiple people come on board. I think it is the best time that I have seen as a screenwriter in 15 years of this work.
That's
So
nice.
yeah, I mean, if you're keen, you should definitely give it a year and a half before you change your mind. But I mean, in the beginning, I would say that I would all like, it's just something I tell everyone. It's, if you have a relative in Bombay, and can you, like, if you can be like less hostile to them for a while, and if you can like have someone take care of your rent for a bit, or like you have some savings that you can bank on, or you have a partner who can like take care of you the first few years, because the gestation period is such, like,
Yeah.
those first few years are the years that are going to be tricky. And then it will just get smooth. So till you have like your first film into production, where the big chunk of your money is going to be. So I'll just quickly also give you how the contractual work happens in Bombay. So whatever your fee is, like, let's say it's like a gorgeous 45 lakhs, 50 lakhs on a screenplay. It's a notional amount. That is where I must like temper it for you, because you only get like 10% of your signing, and most of your work will be done by the time you're like moved into your second milestone. So it's normally like your payments will be divided around your submissions, and it will be broken into like easily 5 or 6 big milestones. What I'm trying to tell you is that they'll take the maximum work out of you by the time you've not even got 50% of your money. Like, you would have done your entire first half of the screenplay, or you would have done entire second, may have just delivered 2 drafts of it, and you wouldn't have been paid on a 45-50 lakh thing. You wouldn't have been paid like even 10 or 15 lakhs. उतने में सारा काम कर देना होता है. And then you wait for the film to go into production. So your bigger checks will only get encashed when the film goes into production, when the film is nearing release, etc., etc. And the fatter the check is, harder it is for you to get your money. So your fee is always notional. You have to,
Right.
so basically money will, and no writer can work on one project in Bombay. So because it's so expensive, and also it's so risky, like everyone like juggles between couple of projects or 3 projects at one time.
Right.
So which is why, so there's always paucity of time, and there's always a deadline pressure. That is why it's difficult. Like, that is why it is a tough juggle.
Right.
It's not that easy, and you have to like imagine the pressure, because you have to constantly perform. You can't say, oh, this happened or that happened, mujhe aaya nahi, mujhe samjha nahi, mujhe aur samajhna nahi. You have to perform, like, whatever it is, you have to, around the day of the delivery, even if you, let's say, you take a week longer from your deadline, like, so everyone kind of like is lenient around like a few delays, but no one can sit on it for months, like waiting for you. Then you also like there's also the terrible reputation that may just go around, like the word of
Right.
mouth thing,
Yeah.
that someone develops for example, a reputation for always delivering late, or like, for example, they don't deliver for months. So that's also like sometimes like you because it is a very tiny incestuous industry. Ultimately, there are almost only like 250 people working at one point of time in development area. So the word spreads really quickly. So one has to be watchful for, especially when one is dependent on commercial assignments. If you have found other routes, like if you have like multiple things going on, like you also work in TV, you write lyrics, you like, then you still have like few things that are keeping the bills going. But
Right. Okay.
That's
okay. So next question, we'll run through the questions a little rapidly. So the next question is, do all characters come from life, or can a character be completely concocted from imagination?
Yeah, a character can be completely concocted from imagination, but it has to be human. Like, it has to be engineered with human emotion. It has to operate and land in a way where it is universalized and can be related to. Like, I mean, that's how I look at it. Like, it can come from anywhere. The inspiration can come from anywhere. So many times, I'll tell you to quickly answer, like, I'm taking a bit of liberty, but all the men that I create are fantasies because they don't exist. Men are terrible. Sorry, generalization, but but
I agree with you.
whenever I write, whenever I write men for screen, I try to look for allies. I try to give them positive traits. So that's fantasy, right? They actually don't exist in real life. So there you go. I write characters that don't exist. I concoct them, and they work.
All right, cool. Kumkum has the question. Kumkum was actually here 3 months ago. Hi, Kumkum. Everyone wants a pilot and the whole show synopsis slash pitch, etc. However, to get gigs where I can just assist so that I learn on the go and do not have to invest time to develop a whole show as an amateur writer. So how do I get gigs where I can just assist and learn on the go without having to develop a whole show as an amateur writer? That's what the question is.
I mean, this is a catch-22 situation. You'll have to just come and hustle, Kumkum. You'll have to come, invest yourself, attach yourself to projects, wait for a chance, stay in the, in a network of people who first trust you enough to give you, first try you out for a smaller association, and then give you a slightly more senior job. Whichever way, it depends on who's hiring you, who trusts you, who starts believing in your talent. It's something you will have to just come and do for yourself. That's the thing that's very anarchic. There is no one way in which people do things. So that's the problem.
Right. Next question is a simple one. Do you write in English or Hindi?
I mean, my screenplay is in English, and my dialogue is in Roman Hindi or English.
All right. Then the next question, socio-political subjects are very prominent emotional component. How do you address the emotional part? Is it mostly raw, direct, or are there modulations and adjustments? Yeah, you can.
I may have answered this, I think.
Yeah. Okay, all right. There was a question which was directly addressed to me, which was about how does writing with and without dialogues work? So I know that, sometimes the dialogues are given out to somebody else, and then sometimes the same person can write the screenplay and the dialogue. And so the dialogue writing is a separate gig which is paid for separately. And some people specialize in dialogues while others specialize in the story and screenplay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, that is correct. In India, we tend to separate all three jobs. Okay. They can be actually separated. They can all come out from one person. We can also bring in more people after you've done a dialogue. You can still bring in additional dialogue writers, additional screenplay writers. So it is a collaborative job in that sense. But some people, for example, have a great penchant for dialogue writing. They just bring a lot of wit, a lot of flair. Some people are also brought in onto the job because they have a certain vernacular expertise which you don't have. I wouldn't be able to write any vernacular outside of Hindi and English. So for example, right now I'm writing something which I know is very rooted in one culture, and after I finish my draft, which I would have finished perfectly with my scene breakdown, because my dialogue beats are really strong. But yet I know that I'll need a dialogue pass from someone, and outside of the dialogue pass, I'll expect them to come and marshal it with this kind of cultural finesse, which I would have missed out on, the cultural metaphors or idioms or stuff like that. So there is a lot that I wouldn't know. While I would know that the emotional integrity of the scene is something that I've already locked. The dialogue writer is welcome to take it a little further, but not away from my structure. So this is where the dialogue writing and screenplay writing would separate.
Okay. Next question is, how do screenwriters network for potential projects, for example, in writers' rooms? So is that really a screenwriters networking, or is that something that's put together? I would imagine
they don't really network. Writers hate each other. I mean, that's actually a good chance for you to losing job. But writers, I'll tell you, the best way to liaison with other possible collaborators is when you go to festivals, when you, of course, in the industry, you go introduce yourself to directors, to production houses. You also could meet a lot of writers in programs like these, for example, like, or even like residencies or script labs. So there is a good chance to, like, once you come to Bombay, you will see that the industry is very tiny, while it is like, you would end up meeting a lot of people here and there. So don't worry about that. Wo ho jayega.
Cool. All right. The next is advice for screenwriters interested in pitching an original story to producers and how to incorporate rejections into the pitching process. So I don't know if Siddharth comes into this process.
Sorry, what?
So
What
the
comes into
question,
process? Siddharth.
Siddharth Jain, yeah, Story Inc. So the question was advice for screenwriters interested in pitching an original story to producers and how to incorporate rejections into the pitching process.
How to incorporate rejections.
Yeah, so I would imagine it's like, how do you just cater for them, or how, should we apply to 5 people so that we can hopefully get land one? That's, I would imagine, would be normal. But
yeah, I mean, there is no, it's your private hustle. You can do what you like. Like, there is no one way of doing it. You could get it right with one producer. You may not, your story could be stellar, and yet it may not work for the most known producers, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't have potential. So you should never really take rejection personally. Like, people mostly reject things basis commercial potentiality of a project, which may not have actually anything to do with your creative potential or what you're what you want to pitch. So you should just keep trying. Yeah.
Niharika has an interesting question. Why are writers so secretive when it comes to earning opportunities in this profession, unlike other professions where before entering the professional aspirant knows what to expect? I think it's probably just the nature of the industry, right? I mean, it's no job description and salary package that's handed to you. So what do you think?
When you mean secretive, can you ask her what does she mean by that? Like,
so Niharika, when you're saying secretive, are you just saying that it's not a specific and very clearly defined sum that one makes, or did you have something else? You can come
as
on
in
and
money, like
money. She's
money.
talking specifically about earning.
Yes.
There is this.
And I hope I'm audible.
Yes,
Yes.
go ahead.
Am I?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm talking about earning because whenever we ask anybody that what should we expect from one profession or whatever, everybody says first you have to dive down to explore. Not every time it is like that. Everybody has that liberty that you have financial stability that you can explore and dive down. So there is no specific idea how would you earn, what would you earn, what is the time limit in which you can think that it is going to work out for you. I mean,
right.
Nobody tells. Nobody tells.
Got it.
Atika. I get it. I get it. No, it's a fair query because it is a risky one. That is why, I mean, it is very anarchic. It is unorganized, and even after being very organized in the last few years, there is actually no guarantee that you will be fully paid for even the contract that where you commit to a certain fee. You really don't know if you're going to even go past the first milestone. You might just be actually doing the whole project on the signing, which is why there is that tentativeness and non-committalness to the whole thing, where even people like me or my other producers or colleagues will always sound a little vague. But I can tell you what the Writers Association, SWA, Screenwriters Association, has been bargaining for with the producers body for a while. And at this moment, as I know that they're looking at minimum wage for writers, where they're looking at 8 lakh per element. So if you look at that, like a story, screenplay, and dialogue, separate jobs, then they're basically negotiating for how much is that? Like I find I would not 8 lakhs. I think they're looking at 36 lakhs as a minimum fee if you were to like commit to writing the delivering the whole screenplay. So basically, your signing amount, like a 5% would be 1.5. I'm talking about a film, not a show. 1.5. If it's a 10%, then 3.6 something. That's your signing amount on 3.6 lakh on a signing amount, where you decide, like, I don't think you will get more than 4 months on a project like this. You'll have to commit to delivering a project to a certain milestone in 4 months, you know. So
Right.
something like that, like a 4-month thing for 3.6 is something that SWA is bargaining for. I am telling you that it's something for a writer who has no release and who's just coming from nowhere. It's a tough figure to win on for someone who's absolutely raw. Like, you
Right.
won't get exactly 4 lakhs for if you have done no work in the market.
Fair enough. We want to. I'm sorry.
For a Bible, for quickly, just to
Yeah.
add, Neha, because you know,
Sure,
I
sure.
did hear, I hear the angst in Niharika's question, and I relate to it. Do not settle for anything. Like, if you're settling for 6 months of your time and you promise to deliver and you are invested, don't go into unpaid gigs. I think that the professionalism for you also kind of like, you will also take yourself more professionally if you commit to a time limit and you deliver.
Right.
So what you can do is you can define your submissions around, like, you take a 50,000 signing and commit to a partial deadline, like commit to something like a partial milestone in 4 to 5, 6 months, and settle for like 1 lakh, 2 lakh, somewhere around, settle for 1 lakh, 2 lakh for your first Bible, for example, like the first draft of the Bible. Do not commit to a pilot immediately. A pilot, so separate the pilot from the Bible,
Fair
something
enough.
like that. But so commit to smaller amounts, but deliver. And do not go into unpaid gigs, because when you commit to an unpaid gig, you also, I'm just saying from my experience, you will also not feel professional enough to finish it.
Right.
So to motivate yourself, go into professional contracts, like go into professional agreements, you know. Keep your
Okay.
word, honor your word, because you're going to be paid for it. But then you also invest in, like, take smaller stabs of money and deliver chunks and then get compensated for it. But do not go into less than, like, stay in the territory of 1 lakh and 2 lakh, even if you're a newcomer, for a gig that could be anything between 4 to 6 months of your life. I think that's safe. And in that time, you also manage to prove yourself, your chops. You also learn while writing on the job to your producer.
Fair enough. So we'll close with the last question, and then we'll move to talking a little bit about our writing progress, which has been a little slow. Ritu has a question saying, could you talk a little bit more about script labs and how does one access these?
There is the NFDC script lab. There is, of course, the fancy ones like Sundance, and there is Torino Film Lab. These are for obviously very, very, like, you know, people who are already, like, have had films out there. But NFDC Script Lab, there is also one that now Screenplay Writers Association does. SWA also has a script lab. There is a lab like this. So yeah, there is one that Anshulika Dubey has just begun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. That's great information. So I think I want to call it quits, but I think this has been awesome. So thank you so much. And I'm sure I speak for all of us. It's been lovely. Some people have already put messages in the group saying many thanks, Atika. Thanks, Atika. That's the most clear response to my query, Niharika is saying, I've received till date. So that's really cool.